Hello ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another video. And then today we are going to be building the 172nd T90, but from Vespid. These guys do the best 172nd kits and they are so crisp. Here is the T90 that we're going to be doing today, and I'm very eager, so let's get straight into it. And so there is no better place to start than the wheels, and luckily there's only 6 on each side, so I mean you had to paint rubber on each one, so yeah, you gain some and lose some. Anyway, we're just going to be doing the basics, sanding off the seam line that's down the middle of the rubber tyres, and then we're going to put them on. They went on lovely on the suspension. I did start the suspension before this, but we're doing the wheels now. Anyway, once we've got the wheels on, we're going to properly align them so that it makes our life easier on the tracks. Note to self, I did not make my life easier. If anything, I made it worse. Anyway, putting on the running gear was nice. These ones fit on so nicely. With a little bit of force and some glue, they went together super nicely. After finally doing that, we're going to put the tracks on. And yes, this is only the top half, but it's a shame. It does make it a lot harder when we put the side skirts on, but as I said earlier, you win some, you lose some. Anyway, we're going to put on the top part of the chassis, which fits like a glove. It fitted amazing. All it needed was a bit of glue on both sides. The back was a little bit iffy, but I managed to get that sorted. Anyway, if you're wondering what T90 we're doing a Syrian T90. And it is probably one of my more favourite topics to do for Russian tanks. Well, not Russian, but you know what I mean. We put on everything side armour, and then we start with the photo edge, or bling. So with this, it's really well detailed on this 172nd kit. I would say even better than some of the 135th kits. Here are the 3D printed lights that are super detailed. Like really, really detailed. Now we're doing the side skirts, and we're just cutting it down the middle of where the lines are. And once we've cut it, I'm going to cut the other one. Well, you've got to cut all along between the joints. And then once you've done that, you want to get your tweezers or whatever you can use, and then we're going to bend it. This helps to sort of create gravity or realism to it to show it's been bent and destroyed. Putting them on was just as difficult as doing everything else, really. The hinges weren't right, and so the fit was very tight. You had to put some work into it. I managed to get it eventually, but it was just a lot of work just for a couple of side skirts. After we have put on all the side armour and the little square panels and made them look a bit more, well, different, we're going to move on to using some Tamiya white putty, thinned with some extra thin from Tamiya, to help create the rubber texture, and that will definitely help a lot later for when we do some effects. I'm not going to hand sand it, but yeah, it's going to be fun. This will help out a lot more. We're not just going to do it on the side skirts though. That'd be a bit weird if I just did it there, when there could be a lot more. So once we have textured the side skirts, I'm going to move on to the turret. And on the turret, we're just moving into all of the raised panels that look like they should be textured. And once you put everything on there, it doesn't really matter. It eventually can't be seen anyway. You have to look right up to it. As you can see, we're just doing all the big panels as well. After we have fully textured the turret, we're going to move on to putting the gun on. And let's just say there's some surgery involved. You have to cut off some of the bottom ring just so it can fit right. Not the best, but not much I can do. Well, I could do better, but not really. It's a bit late now. Anyway, without my complaining. We're adding on all the little, well, more little parts like the boxes and the mirrors. Well, I don't even know what these are. Cameras, sights. I'm assuming they're sides. Anyway, they fit on very nicely, very snug, but it went on really good, as I said. As we're going to put on the back box, which actually fit on really nicely. I was quite surprised. But throughout the build, it did keep, well, swinging off. I probably should have put on something for it to better to put on, but it's a bit late now. Now we're going to be cutting off the resin lights, or the 3D printed lights. Do not cut it the way I did. Mine was just very sporadic, I think. It was just, I picked up whatever I could to cut it open. You should probably use water with the knife as well. The water just helps to make sure you don't actually break anything. However, the lights were a pain to put on. As you can see, one of them is knocked out, which is in one of my photo references. After I am happy with the build, I think this is where we're going to get ready for the painting process. I'm very happy, it went together really well. Anyway, let's get straight into it. So, starting off the painting process, we're going to high pressure with our airbrush some IPA onto the surface. This will help to get rid of any of the dust or grease that I had on my butterfingers. After we have done that, this is where we start to use the primer. I'm using one-shot grey primer. You can't really tell when I'm using it on camera because it's very close to the plastic and the colour isn't very strong. But anyway, it went on lovely. It managed to capture all the details that I wanted. After I've primed it, well, as I keep priming it, sorry. Yeah, this grey primer is super nice. When a fresh new bottle, it works really well. Like, really, really well. Anyway, we're moving on to shadows. We're using X1 from Tamiya, which helps to create shadows, and basically in this scale, because we have it fully assembled, this is going to help us to create where we can't go with paint. It's going to show like nothing, so it's very handy for shadows, as I said. You want to go between like all the panels, so in the sense it's pre-shading, just not really pre-shading. Anyway, once we've got it done, be aware this is very thin. I do believe it's like 80:20 ratio. Yeah, it's pretty much nothing. Also, I had nothing left of my mixture, so as you can imagine, there wasn't actually much to get out from it. We're also going to be painting the rubber plating to help create a better effect, and I guess whatever it is really. Well, other than that little spill, we are getting straight onto the paint. We are using Tamiya Khaki, thinned down to probably 60-40 or 70-30. I can't remember. We're mixed with some gloss varnish as well. The khaki is the closest colour I found to the sand colour that the Syrians used for their t90. We're going to be using it in just a normal basic pattern. No mottling, no post shading. You've got to see what I'm going to do with it. Now we're moving on to the end of it. The paint went on really well. The gloss varnish just helps to create a smoother surface. Well, it sprays smoother, and any sort of shading you want to do. It makes it a lot easier to see what you're doing, and it keeps the colour. That's the main thing. As now we spray the turret, this is where the X1 will probably come in a lot handy, because the turret scores so many little things. The X1 is going to help create all the little shadows that you can't see. I'm super happy how it went on the turret and everywhere else. As I said, the X1 really helps because everywhere where I couldn't get to in the airbrush did create like an artificial shadow, which worked really well. Then we move on to the chassis. I use the bottom part of the chassis for testing. After we have done that, we're going to put some Ammo MIG chipping fluid. I put three layers of it on, so that when I do the later layers, which is where we're going to try the distressing, which is a great technique to use on Syrian tanks, since a lot of them are very distressed and just sun bleached. We're going to be spraying the normal khaki mixed with some deck tan, and this is going to help to create the lighter colour that will create the variation between the actual normal khaki and the distressed effect. I really liked it. There's some iffy areas where I just didn't do well, and I went too harsh with it. Make sure you're not going in like too thick of a layer, because otherwise this effect is not going to work well. which is why in some areas I went too thick, and when I tried to reactivate it, it would come off in much larger chunks. I'm going to spray it on the turret as well, because obviously you got to do it everywhere, not just in one place. It will look wrong. Now we're going to be reactivating the chipping fluid with some water and an old Revel brush, which I got from an old kit. Basically, we're going to use that on first, we're going to rub it on, and basically you'll want to go try between, or sort of dry brush it in the sense, but if you do that, it will help to go over all the effects and distress it. If you couldn't see it, I went very harsh in some areas, which I could have gone lighter in, but hey, we can cover it up with camo. With tanks, it's very easy to recover any problems. As you can see there, I went far too strong. Now we're moving on to the turret. I will say the turret is probably one of my most favourite parts of this kit, since the T90 has got such an interesting and a lot in the turret. There was actually more parts to the turret than the chassis on this model. After I had done this, I tried to figure out maybe I should take off the thing that's holding my turret. Safe to say I should have done it sooner than possible. Because turns out super glue and doing that ends up not working because it didn't want to come off. So I had to end up using some plastic cutters to actually get it off. After definitely not losing my cool and putting it back in the box, I ended up getting back to it the next day. So now we're doing the camo. We're using RLM 70 from AK Real Colors range. Probably one of my most favourite range that AK has ever done. I like their AK 3rd gen for hand painting, but their Real Colors are probably my favourite. RLM 70, yeah, that's normally used for German planes, but I noticed the RLM 70 was actually the closest colour to the dark green in my photos, so I was very happy. Because it's more of a black green, and in the photos, yeah, it's a very black green. It's very difficult to see between the camos, but after the matte varnish, it makes it a lot easier to see. And I do like the fact that AK Real Colors, when sprayed super thin and correctly, they're on a nice gloss, which helps us to do the next couple of stages. I have it thinned probably to, I would say 60-40, pretty much the same as the khaki, because I want reasonably smooth lines for my camo. Overall, didn't work the best, but we can cover it up in a bit with the next stage of the camo. After finishing the green camo, luckily the chipping fluid is still activated, and so what we're going to do is use a wet brush again on all the side skirts, mainly the side skirts, not the rest of the tank. We're going to go with a very hard brush. I'm going to help create very scratched effects, because in a lot of my photos it shows on the rubber side skirt area, the paint does tend to come off in like chunks, in scratches. It's very nice. I'm not aiming to do a lot of chipping, so having this is a really good idea. After really liking the effect, I was overall very happy how it ended up looking. I like to put the turret on my tank so I can look. Anyway, we're moving on to the black part of the camo, or so I thought. I'm using the 6RP from Real Colors. Turns out the colour was too grey. So now we're going to use AK Real Colors flat black and go over it. In the sense it helps a little bit, but the black is more exactly how it looked like in my photos and references. And after we have gone through the black, we're going to do the same stages that we did originally with the green, just to help blend in the surface. Overall, the black colour was actually very smooth, and it was actually quite funny to see it next to the gloss surface. It was very weird. On the turret, it was a very difficult place to do the camo because there was so many little bits in the way, so you had to try and get it in. And this scale does not make my life any easier, I tell you. Anyway, as you can see, we're doing the same steps that we did originally with the hard brush, but helping to blend in. The black was a lot more scratched, especially on the rubber areas. It actually helped a lot more because it sort of helped to give the colour on the rubber, but it also showed them looked like what it did on all the photo references I had. Overall, I'm very happy. Once again, I'm going to click it into place and see how it is. I cut off the joints that sort of help you to click it into place. I took them off, and it's a lot more easier to put it there. After a mediocre paint job of writing all the letters and words, well, numbers, sorry, I ended up moving on. So we're going to move on to all the other bits of painting. So we're going to move on to rubber, of the rubber on the wheels. I could have done a lot better, but they end up getting covered up with the later effects. In this video, I decided to create my own weathering, which is called minimalistic weathering, where you don't use earth effect, or you don't use mud, which is quite different, or any kind of dirt effects, just dust. Mainly on Syrian tanks, that's actually a very handy thing to do, since in my photo it showed it didn't have any dust or anything collected on it. It was just a knocked out or broken down tank. Now we're going to be painting the ammo canister with some Mitsubishi colour green. I thought this colour would help to sort of create attention on the ammo canisters, and they looked really nice. After doing that, we're doing some very light chipping with a sponge, and I mean this is very light. This is sort of like to back up some of the dust effects in some of the areas, but it does create the effect I wanted to. We're going to be using some AK Starship Wash. This was a really good colour because it wasn't too dark, but it was a very sort of almost yellowish hint to it, so it was actually very good on it. We made sure to get it on all the shadow areas, and also we're going to use some other stuff to help create grime. Overall, the colour was very good, and I was quite shocked that even with the white spirit, it managed to wipe off of the surface, which was, as I said, quite insane because I wasn't expecting it to do that, but it did it actually very well. That helped to get this model done a lot quicker. After finishing the pin wash and taking it off at the same time, we're going to be using some Ammo MIG neutral wash for some dust. Oh, and on this t90. Oh, this was probably the best way to practice your dust effects. Anyway, we're going to be applying it on the most darkest areas of the tank. Reason being is I don't want to apply it over the light sandy colour because it won't show up as good. So as I said, when we dabble it on with the cotton bud, it just helps to create uneven texture as well for the dust. We're going to be using some rust mixed with some neutral wash from them as well. Reason being is the normal rust colour I would use is just too orange, and using the neutral wash helps to create a more sandy colour version of it. The reason why we're using the rusty colour is to help create wet sand which has been captured in the certain areas. And on this t90 tank, there's a lot of divots in the actual metal, so a great way to practice any sort of effects. I thought of it in my mind, and for the first time ever, it came true. So we're going to be using the neutral wash, as I said. It's also quite good to thin it down, but I don't like it because if you thin it down, it becomes too thin and you just don't catch what you want. But if you get it like this, it becomes perfect. And as I said, I don't want it to go on the sandy areas. It just won't look as good, and I really want it to look good. So after we have done that, we're going to move on to doing more of the rust. But what we're going to be doing is blending some with white spirit, blending the sort of rusty sand colour onto the surface. Reason being is this will not make it as strong, and it'll help to create, well, the effect we're looking for on that area. Anyway, we're going to be using the neutral wash again, but we're going to be streaking it on the side skirts. As I said again, mainly in the black areas and the dark green, because this is where it shows up the most and creates the most attention. The sandy colour just shows nothing. Using this 4-stroke AK brush, which is a really good brush for these kind of effects, I'm hoping to build more Syrian tanks in the future, just so that I can use this brush again. Well, we're going to be doing the dust effects again on the turret. I'm going to get to the end of this part so you guys don't have to see me do it all, because that was just the same process as we did before. Anyway, after doing the turret, we're moving on to doing it on the wheels. You want to make sure the neutral wash is still wet on the wheels. Reason being is it helps to blend the surface and it doesn't create too strong of a colour in the specific areas. And trust me, that won't look good at all. Like, really, not that good. This is the first of the 3 stages, I would say, of the wheels. As I said, minimalistic weathering, where we're not going to use any mud texture. Reason being is, I couldn't be asked, and I wanted to see if I could do it without it. Turns out, yes, you can. You just need to know what you're doing. Anyway, after staring at it for a good 10 minutes and liking it, I decided to move on to the next step. And so now, we're going to be using a dark sepia pin wash. Reason being is, this is going to be the second stage, and it's going to help create the first part of the grease. This just helps create a lot of contrast on the middle area of the wheels. Overall, I was super happy how this effect ended up looking, and it worked really well for what I was aiming for. I did put it in front of the fan just so I could get the rust and the sort of earth colour dry a lot quicker. You can use something else, I used that. Anyway, having a quick little check after it. Overall, I'm super happy. This really does turn out to be a lot better than I thought it would be. This was just sort of a start of a passion project. Now it really is. Because overall, this weathering, I would say almost top notch. Not my best, but definitely not my worst. Trust me, I know my worst. You'll probably see in a bit. Anyway, we're going to be using a black pin wash, which is like probably a couple decades old, which is probably almost as old as me. We're going to be using that, and that is between certain areas, not all of them, but this is going to create the dark colour. Anyway, now we're coming into the last couple of steps. Now, I'm going to be replacing my airbrush needle 02 with a 04. Reason being is, we're going to be using some VMS matte varnish. And so we're going to be putting it on there with an even, you've got to put a lot of it on there. Reason being is, when you do that, it does create it a lot more. You also have to shake it for like, it says 30 seconds, but to be safe, do it for 40. Trust me, you don't want to wait that long. It takes so long for it just to shake it. But once you do that, it actually works a lot better than you would think. After finally finishing the varnish on the turret, we move on to painting the red lasers, or red eyes, with some Tamiya red, clear red. It worked really well, and with my old brush it actually went a lot better than I thought. You have to be very careful, and do not put your finger in it like I did. Luckily, it was just drying, but it does melt the original paint, so please be careful. Anyway, I thought I was finished. Just listen to this click. Yeah, the gun came off. Anyway, putting it back on, now it's done. Anyway, just like a sauna, we can't do it without a little bit of size comparison. I'm going to be getting my 135th T55 that I did in Syrian colours. And this is what I mean by probably one of my worst weathering jobs. I use pigments, so it is quite a while away. This is the Tamiya one, just in case you're wondering. It was the 3-tone that night shifted. I just didn't have... I really want to do this again, just so I can do it a lot better. Because now I have all the stuff. For example, chipping fluid, rust, I can do it a lot better. Anyway, this is the end of today's video. Overall, this T90 is complicated, but overall, an awesome, awesome kit. If you guys like a very complicated 1/72 kit, or you have good eyes, go ahead and buy yourself one of these. It was amazing. I love the paint job. I advise you to do a Syrian version. It's just a whole lot more fun, and you don't have to do as much weathering. Well, you do, but it's not as complicated. Anyway, this is the end. I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye-bye.